Well, hello. Welcome to my May wrap up. So, in May, I started a reading journal. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but I wrote notes about the books that I read, and I also had a tracker for my TBR Bakery TBR and also my pages read per day. Don't look at that, that's June. um, so, in May, I had a couple of days where I didn't read anything, but then I also had days where I got a lot. These were mostly audiobooks. Honestly, I could not read 250 plus pages in a day if I tried, I don't think. Um, but yeah, and I'm really enjoying it. So hopefully this will help me kind of remember what I read because I feel like whenever I do a wrap up, I'm always like, I don't really remember that book, but it was good. All that to say, if you see me kind of looking down, I'm just looking at my little notebook here. So in May, I finished 7 books and I read a decent way through some other ones, so I'll mention those quickly at the end. But for now, I'm going to talk about the 7 books that I actually finished in May. The first one was The Light We Carry by Michelle Obama. That I gave 5 stars. It's my first 5 star of the year. I have not read a 5 star up until that point, so I was very excited. So I loved this book because it was just so full of like hope and encouragement, and like Michelle just gives you so much love if you need it. And I feel like it was kind of geared more towards like young girls, in particular young black girls, but I feel like everybody can get something from it because words of encouragement can be for anyone, really. So, like, just because that's kind of who it's geared more towards, um, if you don't fit in that demographic, like, you should read it anyway. It was so amazing. Like, I felt so inspired after I read it. Well, and actually, I listened to it. She narrates the audiobook. And I just think when an author narrates the audiobook, especially with nonfiction, like, you just get just a little bit more from it. Like there's a little bit more nuance to it when you're hearing the author read their own words. Um, but yeah, it was just so hopeful and encouraging and full of love. And I would really recommend it to anyone, especially like if you're going through a rough time and you just need like a little bit of a push or like a little bit of encouragement. Like you should definitely pick up this book, specifically the audiobook. I really enjoyed it. There's one caveat, I guess, or thing to note. If your political views diverge from Michelle Obama's, she makes her opinions known about certain political figures. So if you might not see eye to eye with her on people in politics recently, in like US politics, there might be some things that trigger you in this book. You know, if politics isn't your entire personality and you can get past that, I really do think there's something in this book for everyone. So, yeah, definitely 5 stars. My first 5 star of the year. I loved it. Moving on. Next, I read, or again, I listened to the audiobook for Ace by Angela Chen. This is a book about asexuality, and I gave it 4 stars. I liked the information, but um it was more academic than I prefer my nonfiction to be, which there's a lot of good information in it. And if you are someone who is curious about asexuality or you just want to learn more, whatever, I definitely recommend this book. It goes into a lot of things that I never even really thought about, like socioeconomic status and privilege, um, what people of color that identify as asexual might have to deal with that, you know, white middle class people don't have to worry about, stuff like that. Like it was very interesting, like the different angles that it came at you with, like stuff that you wouldn't necessarily think about. So yeah, if you're interested in asexuality at all, like if you want to know more about it, whatever, definitely recommend. It's just a little bit more, like I said, a little drier, a little bit more academic than I prefer my nonfiction to be. Next was my first physical book, although I did also listen to the audiobook, so Hush Hush by Becca Fitzpatrick. This was one of my reader unhaul books for the first half of this year. This is just your kind of typical early 2000s YA, like paranormal romance. But For some reason, I just I was so nostalgic reading this. And while I don't necessarily agree with weaponizing weight or promiscuity as much as they do in this book, or just all in all, like overall how white this book is, um, again, early 2000s YA paranormal romance, like that's kind of how they were, I guess. Um, this was not great literature, is what I'm trying to say. This was a 3-star book for me, but it did surprise me with how much I did enjoy it while I was reading it. It's not a new favorite, like nothing like that, but I had a good time while I was reading it. I don't like how much, weight shaming, slut shaming kind of stuff was going on in this book, but just overall, it was a good time while I was reading it. So much so that the next book that I finished in May was actually Crescendo, which is the second book in the Hush Hush series. I read it, or I listened to the audiobook directly after I listened to the audiobook for Hush Hush, because it was just like compulsively readable, or like listenable, because I listened to the audiobook. Again, all the same complaints, but I had a good time with it. I think I was at work and I just needed something to get me through a late shift, like listening to while I did mindless kind of work stuff. So I just downloaded that one from my library as soon as I finished Hush Hush, and it was a quick listen. I actually enjoyed Crescendo a little bit more. I gave it like 3.54 stars. But I mean, that being said, after that, I was kind of over it and I didn't continue with books 3 and 4. So, I mean, that's what it was. It was something that was easy to listen to. I didn't have to think about it too much because it's YA, and it was a good time while I was listening. Not probably ever going to finish the series, but it was a good time. Again, same complaints though, like weaponizing weight and promiscuity, super white, super straight, like it is what it is. The next thing I finished was The Prisoner by B.A. Paris. I really enjoyed this book. I did figure out certain plot points early on, so it was a little bit predictable for me, I guess. And I'm the type of reader, when I read thrillers, I'm not like trying to figure out what happens. So if I figured it out, it's probably pretty obvious. That being said, B.A. Paris's writing, I really enjoy it. I really liked this. And despite figuring out main plot points early on, like I still really enjoyed my time with this. And the most notable thing about this book for me is it's kind of a thriller with no unreliable narrator. I love that. I love a thriller that does not depend on an unreliable narrator. I have said this so many times on my channel recently, but it's true. So that was a huge plus for this book. I gave this book 4 stars. So the next one is a carryover from April. I finished it this month, and that was A Dance with Dragons by George R. R. Martin. I am so happy that I read this, because with this, I caught up with the series. There's still technically supposed to be, I think, 2 more books, but they're not out yet, and they probably never will be. So as far as I'm concerned, I finished the series. So this book, I think I pretty much gave most of my thoughts in my April wrap up, so if you want to see them, you can go check that video out. But I like this one. I feel like we got more plot progression than we did in A Feast for Crows, and this book also involved more of the characters that I enjoy than A Feast for Crows. So overall, I definitely like this one more. This might even be like my second favorite in the series. I don't think anything will ever top the third book. Which one is that? Is that A Storm of Swords? Yeah, nothing will ever top A Storm of Swords. So yeah, that's a series done. I'm excited. I do still have the little like prequel, whatever, Fire and Blood, I think it's called, but I don't know if I'll ever actually read that. So as far as I'm concerned, series is done. Okay, and the last book that I actually finished in May was Parable of the Talents by Octavia E. Butler. It is the second book in the Earthseed. I think it was supposed to be a trilogy, but it's a duology. After Parable of the Sower. I gave this book 4.5 stars, and I'm just going to read you exactly what I wrote in my reading journal, because I really don't even know what else to say. So I wrote, Parable of the Talents, 4.5 stars. Heartbreaking and painful, but also full of hope. I seriously don't know how to feel. And it is now mid-June, and I still don't know how to feel about that book. It's probably one of my favorite books of the year. Obviously, I can't say too much about it because it is a sequel, but I loved it so much more than the first one. Like, the first one was good. I gave it 3 stars, though. And like I said, this one is 4.5. It was so close to being 5 stars. But it just didn't give me that little bit of like, oh my god, I'm obsessed with this book that I really need to give something a 5 star. But it was so good. If you are into science fiction or like post-apocalyptic type of books, I definitely recommend the Earthseed series, duology, whatever it is, by Octavia E. Butler if you haven't read it yet. It was so good. I really loved it. And like, it's to the point where I kind of want to reread the first book because I loved the second one so much that if I reread the first one, I'm wondering if I would like it more. Like now that I'm more familiar with the world and stuff. But I don't know. I don't know. It's the same kind of feeling that I got with Gentlemen Bastards. Like, I gave The Lies of Locke Lamora 4 stars, and then it ended up being a 5-star series for me. So I feel like if I ever reread The Lies of Locke Lamora, it will probably be a 5-star. It's that same kind of feeling that I have with that book. So those are all the books that I finished in May. And now I just want to quickly go over some of the books that I started but didn't finish. Starting with The Vampire Diaries, I had to read the first story in this, which was The Awakening. I started it. I think it's like 200 something pages. I got to page 65. So I did not finish this. I might keep this. This is, again, another one of my reader on haul books. I might keep it since I did read 65 pages of it and it was very quick. Like, I might just kind of continue on with it now. I did pick it up, so I think that counts as not having to unhaul it. I haven't really thought of that yet. I'll figure that out when I actually film that video. But I did start the first story in The Vampire Diaries. And the other one is The Liar's Knot. I read 60 pages of this. So I did not make it very far in this. I made it farther than I did the first time. And okay, I swear I'm enjoying this. So I don't know why I just keep not picking it up. I don't know if it's because it's so thick, it's kind of hard to like read. Like, I don't want to bring it to work with me because it's giant and heavy. Like, I don't really have an excuse, but I did start it. It was on my TBR Bakery TBR. So yeah, like, I did start it, but I didn't get very far. Okay, and then I also have a page in my reading journal where I just kind of make a quick note of what I read each day and other books that I read in May. I finished The Spanish Love Deception like really, really early on, to the point where I just included it in my April wrap-up. I also read some of The Stand-In by Lily Chu. I did not finish that in May, though. I actually finished that at the beginning of June. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. So that is everything that I read in the month of May. Let me know if you've read any of these books, if you had similar opinions to me, or if you completely disagree with me. I would especially be interested in hearing your thoughts on The Prisoner, because I really enjoyed The Prisoner, and also The Liar's Knot. If you've read The Liar's Knot, like, why am I having such a hard time getting into this book? Like, I know it took me forever to read The Mask of Mirrors, even though I was enjoying it, and I'm having the same problem with this. I like it. Like, it's not that I don't like it. So I just don't know why I'm not picking it up. So if you've read this book, let me know what your thoughts were. Let me know how fast you read it. Like, how fast did you read this book if you've read it? And am I just like completely nuts? And also, if you've ever read a book that you really did not think you were going to enjoy, i.e. Hush Hush for me, and then you ended up actually really having a good time with it, not necessarily loving it, but just like getting sucked into it, let me know what book that was in the comments down below. And that's it for this video. I will see you next time. Bye!